Bienvenue dans Sérendipité.
Hi there! So, this is my first podcast ever, which was not supposed to be a podcast actually. This interview was made before Serendipité came to life. I did it with my friend Sarah for a video project. We interviewed Bence, who is part of the NGO called Architecture for Refugees. So, you can guess what this conversation will be about. Even though we were a bit stressed, I had a great time doing it and learned a lot of things. So I wanted to share it. Enjoy! Hello! Oh yeah! Finally! Hi!
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cool. Super.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Very good! Tired now. Yeah, but we...
Are you in Lyon? Are you in Lyon? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, we are right now. And you, where are you right now?
Okay, super. In Zurich.
Oh, okay. We wanted to thank you to answer to us. It's really kind from you. So yeah.
Yeah, so we are two students in second year of architecture in Lyon.
Okay.
And we're 21 and 20. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Claire. Yeah, we didn't say.
Yeah, and we are working on English projects, which is to make a video about a topic we choose on art and its relation with architecture. So we both worked with refugees, so we wanted to choose this field to talk about it and to highlight and spread the role of architects in the refugee crisis. So first, are you okay if we record this interview?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't write back, sorry, but yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You asked it in a previous email, but
No
it's
problem.
fine. Okay.
Just
Don't
ask.
worry.
Okay. So maybe we can first start with a presentation of yourself and your experiences.
Okay, yeah. So hi, I'm Bence. I'm one of the co-founders of the Architecture for Refugees, and I'm an architect. I'm 36, and I'm coming from Hungary, and now I live in Switzerland. Until 2015, I was working as a, let's say, totally normal architect who was interested in democracy, sustainability, social issues, but never really had the chance or the possibility, or I don't know, to start something else, to deal or to do something really different things. There are architecture is a lot of things, and I was always on the mainstream, and then I was always looking for something else. But if you look for the mainstream architecture, like websites and everything, then you always get the same architecture, which is really nice and super rich and very expensive. So in 2015, I was back in Hungary, where I realized I learned this refugee or like this migration crisis or this influx of people running for a better life and also running from a war situation or from a very, very negative situation. So that was the moment when I started to deal with it with my wife. And we are now both doing it and as a kind of spare time job or as a hobby.
Okay. Cool.
Are you looking for short or long answers or
Whatever, really.
Yeah.
whatever? Yeah, it's good.
So, how would you define architecture for refugees?
How would I define?
Yeah.
Or this the organization or the topic? I guess you mean the topic, right?
Yeah.
Well, both.
Actually,
So,
yeah.
because I think architecture for refugees, there is always this kind of feedback that it's not a good title for our organization, because people believe that architecture for refugees means that we are trying to define new architecture for refugees. But actually, we don't want to define a new architecture for refugees because it's the same as architecture for everyone. So Architecture for Refugees, the organization, is only like a title to say or to state that architects and architecture should do a lot for people who are in need.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you are a refugee or not, you need the same architecture, but of course you have different resources. So if you are fleeing your country, your home, then you have almost nothing. And even that's why we are trying also to focus only on refugees, because if you are having a disaster situation in your home country, like an earthquake or a tsunami, or I don't know, then people are very open and kind with you because they are from the same country and they try to help you. But immediately, if you are running from a different country with a different cultural background or social background, then people having fear and having a feeling of they are attacked in a way. And also the media use this, so we are really trying to focus only on refugees and to see the situation from their aspects. And also from the society. Actually, we learned during these last 2-3 years that the refugee crisis is not only about the refugees, but it's also about the welcoming society. So you have to have an open mind, and people also having the feeling that they are attacked in a way, or they are having fear of they're going to lose their identity, they're going to lose their personality, their culture. So that's why they are trying not to let more people into their countries. But if we look it from another perspective, with refugees cultures, we're just going to be richer. So we try to communicate this and try to use this as a positive attitude.
Okay. Oui, ou plutôt.
Vas-y,
Okay. Yeah, so regarding this integration of refugees, we were wondering maybe, do you think migrants are well integrated culturally and socially in their local countries?
As I know, if you are in France, I know migrants are migrants are the refugees, So I think if we talk about the same issue, we should talk about the same language, So I think we talk about refugees and not migrants, because migrants, I am a migrant in an English-speaking language, and people who has to flee and they get a kind of asylum from somewhere, then they had to leave their country. So it's not only about a wish, but they have to. So, and then we really try to focus on refugees in a way, but of course migrants are also in the story at the end. But if we talk about refugees, I think they are absolutely not well or integrated, or we would say included in the society. They are really on the perimeter of the society in every sense, even in architectural or urban planning. So we can find a lot of housing for refugees in Europe on the outskirts of our cities. So some were hidden, some were invisible. And this also generates immediately a social and cultural segregation. And as you asked, also I would even say financial segregation. So in many countries, they are not allowed to work, or they have just a limited possibility to start working. They have not too much support from the state or from the public to learn the new language. So I think language would be a very important issue to start a new life in a new country. And then the legal possibilities to enter the legal market, the labor market, so to start working. And the third is about housing. So to find your home, it's also very difficult.
Yeah.
I could talk a little bit about Switzerland, where a lot of people get legal status, asylum status for every year. So they have to renew in every year. And if the housing market is very, very limited in terms of empty homes, then they cannot really enter the market. So they are always going to get very temporary housing and not a fixed good house.
Okay.
Do you think architects can improve refugees' life, and to what extent?
Yeah, I think we wrote an article about identity and space. So I'm gonna send you this later. But
thank you.
So I think identity and space both have a lot to do with architecture. How your spaces are, it defines your identity, and your identity should also define your spaces. And we define 3 levels from privacy, so like your home or your bedroom, living room, to community spaces, which is like where you can find your friends or you can meet with your colleagues or something, and to public spaces, which is like for everybody, really like a public space. And on these 3 levels, you always have to have access. So if you have your private space, but you don't have community spaces or public spaces available for your life, then you are excluded from the society. And these kind of architectural spaces are also needed. But only architects cannot solve these issues because they are social issues, they are economic issues. So we must have a collaboration always with the society, with other communities or public institutes.
Okay.
And yeah, I think this is the 3 levels. It's very important. And then this kind of connection with the society and with finance and with culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, according to you, how can architects contribute to improving refugees camps or refugees' life? I mean,
I think this was the last question.
Yeah.
But like refugee camps, or I think the same. It's we can talk about cities or refugee camps. It's a good question because we can talk about a lot about this. So we can talk about different qualities. We can talk about refugee camps or villages for the society where refugees live, or towns or cities. But at the end, all have the same or need the same qualities. So you need an infrastructure, you need electricity or water and whatever. And you need also spaces like private spaces, community spaces, and public spaces where you can work, where you can have rest, and you can have community life, social life, so on and so on. So, and it's independent if you are talking about the refugee camp in Calais or Dunkirk or Greece, anywhere really around the world. So the same things always come back, always coming back.
Yeah.
According to you, how can a country improve their welcoming policy with the migrants?
Yeah, I think this is like about labor market most of all. Yeah. So a friend of mine said once that if you give me a job, I can integrate myself. So if people are allowed to work, then they can pay for their rent, they can pay for their education, language, schools, everything. And then they are not depending anymore on the societies, like on the public, on the social money and so on. So give the possibility to work, and then you should also, of course, start supporting with language schools, with further education. So maybe some people have never had an education in their home country. Maybe some of them, they are having really well-educated people just not allowed to use their knowledge because they are like from different cultures, or I don't know. So these kind of legal issues are very important. And in other hand, the society, we always talk about public and politics and about like not us, but them. But at the end, we also have to realize that to welcome refugees and new like arriving people, we have to open our mind and open our doors, and we have to start understanding the new people's background, culture, language, everything. So we have to come together and we have to share thoughts and discussions, and we have to just live not only next to each other, like isolated small bubbles, but we have to come together and sit to the next door table, and we have to like have discussions and so on, interactions, let's say.
So I think it's the main ideology of your organization. So maybe you can tell us more about how you work and what are your goals and how
Mhm.
the
Yeah, I
experience
mean,
there.
we always wanted to use architecture as a superpower to do this something, and we never really knew what is it. So actually, I think almost like 2 years, 1.5 years, was only about understanding the situation.
Yeah.
And I think this is the understanding that we have to bring people together in this situation, in a refugee camp or in a city or in a town or wherever. And we have to bring them together, and we have to offer spaces for these different cultures and people to come together and to learn each other and to have a diverse, colorful discussion and interaction. And now with the Architecture for Refugee Schweiz in Switzerland, for example, we are only trying to do this. So we are really supporting these intercultural actions. And actually in our cities, we have a lot of spaces which are available already. So we have cultural centers, we have smaller, bigger cafes, and a lot of them are open to host these events, these intercultural actions. So maybe we don't even have to build, but we have to reorganize our structures and reorganize our spaces.
Yeah.
And the people, the individuals, have to start really doing these new things in our existing structures, like cities. And with the international architecture for refugees, I think it's also an important this knowledge transfer or this information exchange. So I would say 20% of our societies would like to welcome refugees because they already know a little bit about refugees. 20% of the people of the society, they say no refugees because they have fear, or they just they are like this. And 60% of the society just don't care. They don't have any information, any knowledge about it. It's a very complex issue. So everybody tries to understand, but it's so difficult. So they just give up after a very short period. So we have to communicate a lot about this issue. So we have to bring those 60% to the side where they start understanding what is this issue about, so they can also start being active, being more open, and so on.
Okay. And so I guess your organization go towards refugees, but are refugees also coming to you and to know more about your organization and how you can help them?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think it's like the normal society that, I would say, 5% of the society is really proactive and really trying to do something. And then the rest, 40% of the society is joining these people who are drivers. And the rest they are not even on the same train. So they are just at home and they are happy with their own life. So, and this is also true for refugees, since they are also all normal human beings like all of us. So 5%, they are proactive and they are doing on a daily basis a lot to improve their life. And 40% can join these people, and the rest just waiting for the magic, for the and so we also have sometimes people who just come to us and say, let's do something, or we approach and so on. So it's also interesting, for example, that if you start organizing an event, then many people would like to have a lot of refugees in these events, but they are just normal people like any of us. So if there is a city with 40,000 people and only 5 comes, then why would all other refugees come? If 1% of the society doesn't come, then why would 200 refugees come? So they are also not interested in, because it's not a good action. So we need other actions.
Okay.
Like a good example, I would say running or sports can move a lot of people. And it's funny because if you organize a running group for refugees, then a lot of refugees are there. If you organize a running group for non-refugees, there is a lot of non-refugees. But if you try to mix it, it's almost impossible. So somehow people don't like it, or they still don't get it. So we have to just push it further, or we have to have new kind of activities like cooking and eating. It's a very useful thing. So it's one of the best actions I can bring as an example. But also for cooking and eating, you need spaces, no? So you can cook and eat almost everywhere, but if you have a nice and very positive ambient for this action, as an architect, you can generate this. Then people gonna go home and they're gonna be even more positive and happy if this environment was very positive.
Yeah.
Do you think that migration will define the future of architecture and urbanism?
I think it's migration. It's like a human nature. It's a part of our humanity. So we always had migration. We are still having migration, and we will always have migration. So I have the example always here in Zurich, for example, that the Italian migrants back in the 60s, 70s, maybe, they brought pizza and they brought the culture of sitting outside, to have a plaza and to have outdoor activities. Now, if you would say to the Swiss society that we take away everything that you got from the Italian culture influence, they would cry, without pizza, without corners, without sitting outside and having coffees all around, it's impossible. So you cannot imagine it anymore. And then the Portuguese people came and they brought their culture, and then now the Lebanese people came, and now the Syrian and Afghan people came, and they all brought their culture. It's still not really integrated in this story because it's too fresh. But maybe, or I'm quite sure that in 15, 20 years, if you would say that, I don't know, some bread, an Afghan bread or a Syrian bread, everybody would say it's almost Swiss, but it's not.
Yeah, I think it's the same in France.
Yeah, it's exactly, and all the countries say it's very unique in our country. It's very unique in our city. It's everywhere. It's very unique, but at the end there is 15 things that we should do, and it's independent from where you are. So these kind of solutions have no borders. So the answers are always this language and education and labor market and open doors. So from society, you also need an open door and then
open minds.
Open minds, exactly. So yeah.
Well, you already answered partly this question, but do you think that architecture can solve the migrant crisis or a refugee crisis, maybe?
Yeah, I think yes, for sure. But on the other hand, I think it's always, architecture is always, was and is and will be connected to society, So to society, financial issues, cultural issues. Sure. So in the architecture as a building a space, it cannot solve any issues if the people who pay for the architecture don't want to have it. So we have to have a society which is open for this kind of solving problems. And if we have this society and we have the clients, then architects we can for sure develop spaces and spatial aspects which are positive and open and welcoming.
Yeah.
So, how would you encourage students or young architects to deal with this issue?
That's not easy.
I think more and more people are coming to us with this question of, I would like to do something, but I don't know what.
Yes.
and I'm interested in, but I don't know how can I do the first step and second step and third step. And like it's super complex. So everybody is looking for the truth or the false, or looking for the black or the white. And I would say there is no such a thing like one best solution, but there are a lot of small steps. So we have several mottos now, and one of the mottos that we use often is "many small makes a great." So you have to do a lot of small steps and a lot of small actions, and all of these actions gonna create this kind of bigger good. And maybe it's not as visible as building a skyscraper in New York, but this is the thing. So we are looking for sustainable, long-run solutions, and if you want them, we have to have a lot of small steps. And we also developed with students from Tirana University of Polis, like a manifesto, which is called "From the Culture of Waiting to the Culture of Care." And it was somehow really connected to this refugee crisis as well. So we always come up with like excuses that, I would like to do something, but not today, but tomorrow. Yeah, but there is always tomorrow, and you will never have time. So you have to take action immediately, whatever that is, but now. And even if it's a very small action, even if it's just sharing one post on Facebook, it's one action. And while you start these small actions, you learn the process. So it's also a kind of learning by doing. And it's a new field. So now more and more architectural schools and groups start to talk about it. So what does it mean to have this social architecture, let's say, which is like total new architecture, but maybe with less money, or you don't know who is the client, or you don't know who is going to pay for it. So just do it. I think it's like, I don't know, it's kind of, so Nike is a good, I think we can always take a Nike brand because it's a success story. So why not saying like this? And we have like a list for this, from the culture of waiting to the culture of care, a list of things what you have to do as an architect maybe, or as a human being. Like if you're an architect, you are trying to give solutions for people. So you must listen first. What is the needs and what are the problems? And so listening and then responding, and not like you design something sexy and you give it to the people and they don't like it. And you are angry that, these users don't know what to do with my super cool architecture. No, first you have to listen what is the problem or what are the needs, and then you can respond.
What?
And so on and so on. So I will send also this link to this small, like it's an A4, and I wrote a short story, so I will also share with you these answers, written answers.
Thank you.
Yeah, we also worked on a project last year with. We had to choose a family in France and study how they live and how their house fits them, I would say. And I actually chose a Syrian family that came in France in 2016, and they were saying what you're telling us about the idea that houses are not always fitting cultural habits of families, and so architects are not always best people to understand the clients.
And it's also about integration in a way. So this is probably it was a good French house. Hosting French traditional culture of like a family. But it's not fitting to a family which is having a different background. So you have two options. You take what you get. It's a kind of integration. So you take you have to take all our cultural everything.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
Or we also say that you bring a lot of cultural values. So we have to also learn from you, and we have to integrate this culture into our society, and we have to develop new ideas, new architecture, and so on and so on. So. And there's like this kind of, it's a question, and the society should answer it, I think. And every individual have to have this or that, like a decision. And then this is very simple. If you want to say, no, I'm not interested in other cultures, I'm closing our door and I leave my very traditional, or I open the doors and I get a lot of new influences. New values are also there, but I will also lose something for sure, because not lose it, but like you will get more. So you're gonna have like 200 and not only, maybe with this kind of motto of this pie, no, of how this is. I don't know, but something like diversity is not like a pie.
Yeah.
That if you take one, then you're gonna have less pie. No, it's about you're just gonna have more. So something like this. Yeah. So listen and respond, and So this manifesto is really funny because it was a result of a workshop, and it was not even the goal to develop this manifesto, but the students were so stuck and so always like waiting for someone and waiting for something, that at the end we developed this manifesto, and now it's like I think many students use it on a daily basis to help their daily life. So
so
I think it's cool.
I don't know if something. Well, we had another question, but you've already answered it, I think. This was about the jungle. You've probably heard about this crisis in Calais.
Yeah.
And so how did you feel about it?
Yeah, so I've been in the jungle with there was another organization called Refugees.
Oh, you went there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And
they aimed to map the whole jungle, because on our maps, if you have invisible things, nobody knows that they are there. But if you have visible things, so London has a map. Even Calais, the city or the town, has a map, but the jungle had no map. And if you don't have a map, you are not existing. So we did the map with them, collaboration. So we mapped the jungle, and then we had an open street map. It's open for everybody. I just checked it today, and now it's deleted everything. So now it's again an empty field because there is nothing. So they updated it already. But I will send you like 2 images how it looked like in 2016, with small streets, a lot of mosque and church and restaurants and hundreds of tents. So it looked like any normal like urban situation.
Okay.
And we also wrote an open letter to save the jungle back in 2016, because it was like I think in November that they demolished. And in October, we wrote an open letter to say that, to state that it's a very informal and maybe even illegal situation and very bad. Conditions are very bad, but it's still better than nothing. So we said it's still bad, but it could be improved. And as we see right now, the situation around Calais, it's getting just worse and worse, and people have nowhere to go, and their conditions now are even worse than it was in while the Calais jungle was existing. So.
Okay, so I think with our questions we're done, but maybe you have something to add or something to share with the architecture school of Lyon. I don't know.
Yeah. I think this is the you already asked this question of how to start doing something. Since the mainstream architecture is everywhere, still the mainstream, then it's very easy to enter that area. But if you have the feeling that you are not really belong to this story, or you would like to do something else or something more or less, I don't know, but something else, then you have to look for new solutions or new stories. And I think there is more and more opportunities and organizations doing different architecture or doing different development. And sometimes architecture is really not about a very fancy and super architecture posted on one of the mainstream platforms, but it's going to help for sure for many people. So if you ask for needs and if you look around, then you will get things to do, and they're gonna improve many people's life, even without being published on a mainstream architectural platform.
Okay.
Yeah, and go out. Yeah, I think it's very important, because now I run many workshops around Europe, and people and architects and students are still trying to learn the words from books and from through the internet. So if you have a design whatever, or a task to do, then go out, look for people, ask them, sit on the square and observe what is going on, and really try to use the reality as a inspiration, or as a really like learning, and don't afraid of start talking with people. So maybe you first have to ask your mom or your dad, because that's the easiest, and then you can ask your friends, and you have like practicing, and then you can ask people you don't know on the street, or you can look for crazy people. So crazy people are always happy to answer, and there is no problem. Just ask it and you get an answer, and not problem if you cannot use this answer, but do it, because after some practice you will have good answers, good questions that you're gonna like. So it's just something new, and don't start drawing without these first two steps. I think it's also about building. So architects, I'm practicing now for around 15 years, and nothing has ever been built. So it's like I worked for 15 years, I earned 15 years wage salary, and I've never done architecture actually. So now there was like some small scale things that we've done, but so even to enter this new field of social architecture or small scale architecture or small scale interventions, if you start using this as a opportunity to build something, to build a space, to build something for a community, just do it, and then you can also use this knowledge for the mainstream architecture.
Okay, we will. We're trying.
Yeah. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for answering us. It's really kind.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, and please let me like a bit updated what is going on.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
We will send it to you for sure. Don't worry.
Cool.
I don't know if you have questions too.
No, right now I have no. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like the questions a lot, so I think good questions.
Thank you very much, because
to have a discussion.
You're the only organization we found.
Well,
we found projects about refugees and architecture, but we didn't find the real social organization.
Nobody answered.
And we also send emails to other people, but didn't get answers.
I mean, it's also like exactly. So don't give up. Just keep sending materials out, and call people, Facebook people. I don't know what people, just
people.
Sooner or later it will be. I know this. Okay, thanks a lot, and
thank you very much.
Everything.
We'll send it to you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye. Oh my god.
Je crois, docteur, que l'homme de Néandertal est en train de vous le mettre dans l'os. Deux intellectuels assis vont moins loin qu'une brute qui marche.